Okay, so I'm a Jewish Iranian. Um, immigrated to the United States in 1978, before the Islamic Revolution. And the history of Jewish people in Iran, which were a very small minority, dates back to about 2,500 years ago. Back in the first rule of the Persian Emperor Cyrus the Great, he freed the enslaved Jews from Babylon, and being that he was a great ruler, provided freedom of speech, freedom of religion to all of his empire, the Jewish slaves decided that that would be a good place to go back and live. So they settled in a small enclave to what used to be Iran's capital, and that's where they lived all these years until my parents moved to the new capital of Tehran back in 1940s, and they settled and started a family. The Jews in Iran have had some tense times throughout the ages. When Iran became Islamic in about 1,700 years ago, we think that because of the tensions between Islam and Judaism, that the family or most of the Jews were considered second-class citizens and had a difficult time throughout all these years. And we suspect that throughout the years, some of these Jews immigrated to other places around the world. Maybe Spain is considered as one of the places that my ancestors may have moved to. But about 70, 80 years ago, when a new ruler of Iran came to power, his name was Shah, which was a king. King Pahlavi was his dynasty. Being that he was westernized, he was Western educated, understood, the constitution of the Western world, he started to institute a lot of the freedoms to all people, freedom of religion, freedom of speech. And so that made it better for our family. But the westernization of Iran was a double-edged sword. Some people thought that the country was moving too quickly to adopt Western values. The drugs and alcohol, was one of the things, and so it made for the resurgence of the fundamental Islamic values, and so basically the government was taken over by the fundamentalist Islamic in 1979. So that's kind of a quick history. So what my dad decided to do is there were people that were smuggling out of the country through the various borders. If you recall, if you look at the map, Iran is basically bordered by Pakistan and Afghanistan on the east, Turkey, Iraq, and Kuwait on the west side, and back then it would have been the USSR, the Soviet Union, to the north. Okay, and so the easiest border was through Pakistan, through the southeast, and so my mom and my two youngest brothers had to pay a large sum of money to smuggle out. So my dad had to stay back, kind of carry on as usual, not to rise any kind of a suspicion, go to his work, come home. But my mom and two youngest brothers would have been 12 years old and 2 years old at the time. No, I take that back. 12 years old and 6 years old crossed the border, and they went through a lot of hardship. That they basically had to travel at night without any lights and basically stay put during the day. And this was in the middle of the summer, and it was really hot. The area was very desert-like. So I've heard stories of people dying a lot like when you hear Mexicans crossing our border here, through the desert, and it's very treacherous. My youngest brother actually became really sick, dehydrated, and my mom says that he was very near death. So that was tough. But eventually they made it through Pakistan, and there they joined a bunch of people who had already crossed, and there was some services available to these new people that had crossed the border with forged documents, where they can actually travel to other countries. They would make phony passports and visas. So my mom and my two youngest brother ended up in Spain, where they stayed for almost a year. At the time, my father decided that he also needed to leave the country, and he tried the same route, trying to escape out of Pakistan, and he was caught the first time he tried. And he was actually almost executed for trying to escape the country. Lucky for him, he was a textile merchant, and he had a lot of business relationships around the country where he would import and export textile. It's by some very unique circumstance where somebody in that town that knew my dad found out that he was jailed and about to be executed, and so this guy went to the authorities and basically said, no, he wasn't trying to cross the border, he was here for business. He was coming to see me, so he was able to get him out of jail. So my dad went back to Tehran, and a few months later he tried again. The second time he succeeded. He made it to Pakistan. Now, I told you that my dad's brother had already immigrated to the U.S. and was a U.S. citizen. And when you're a U.S. citizen, you can apply for your parents and your brothers and sisters as U.S. citizens, right? The difficulty was that in Iran there was no U.S. embassy. So my dad could not get his citizenship papers to come to the States because there was no embassy to go to. But once he got to Pakistan, he could go to the U.S. embassy there. He went there, he got his passport, his visa, and came to the U.S. And at the same time, he applied for my parents, or my mom, and my two younger brothers who were in Spain. And so they eventually all met in U.S. And so that took about 4.5 years after we had first been here. So I started in high school, freshman year in high school, and by the time I was a freshman in college, they came. So we were reunited. I understood that what a sacrifice my parents went through to bring us here, and I knew that it was an opportunity of a lifetime. A lot of people I knew that couldn't make it here, so I didn't want to squander the opportunity, right? I felt blessed in a way that I need to work hard, and I need to make something of myself to, not just to prove to myself that, the country is country of opportunity, but also to others who may be looking at me like he came basically from, you know, nowhere to here, and he's done well. Give other people a shot at what's possible, you know, if you just work hard. Life now is great. I got 2 wonderful kids, so yeah, life is good. I'm an engineer by profession. I've been here in the southeast Michigan for the last, 30 years? No, 25 years, 30 years, something like that. And basically I've been working in the automotive engineering world, and things are good. It's a good time to be an automotive engineer. There's a lot of jobs and there's a lot of good things happening in the industry.